talk about the guard position, and yes, there is still a need. There is still a hole at one of the guard spots. Like I said, Cleveland or Reef is going to be bumped down inside to play guard in 2020, and we'll see what the plan is beyond 2020. But Mackie, one takeaway from this draft that I had that Vikings fans should have is that I don't want to hear any more complaining that they haven't put resources into the offensive line. Within the last 3 years now, you've used a second round pick on your right tackle, who's pretty good over there. You've now used a second round pick on Ezra Cleveland, who you took this year. You paid Riley Reef a boatload of money, and you used a first round pick on Garrett Bradbury. 4 of your 5 positions, you used valuable assets to get those guys.
Yeah.
Will they hit on everyone? I don't know. You can complain that maybe they didn't make the right choices, but the complaint that they're not putting an emphasis or using resources on the offensive line is in the rear view now. I don't think that that's a complaint that Vikings fans can legitimately make after this draft,
No,
right?
But it was as of a year ago. It was until you drafted Garrett Bradbury in the first round, and then I will give them the same credit you did. And to add to what you just said, by all accounts, they were in discussions for at least a month for one of the best left tackles as of a couple of years ago, Trent Williams in the NFL. So it's definitely a position that they have stopped neglecting. But there was a window there from 2007 through about 2018, 19, almost, I would say about 11-year window where they only you could count on less than one hand how many offensive linemen they took in rounds 1, 2, or 3. Also, Pat Elflein, I believe, was a third-round draft pick. And even though it looks like he's not going to be long for a starting role, like you use a first or a second or a third round draft pick on an offensive lineman almost every year in my book, if you can, especially if you have more than one pick in one of those rounds. So that should just be a rule going forward. It doesn't matter if you have the Washington Redskins offensive line from the 80s. Like if you've got Hall of Famers up and down, you should still be looking to use first, second, and third round picks on linemen, because that is like, if you don't have that right, wide receivers don't matter as much. Quarterbacks don't matter as much. Like if you don't have that right, you're not going to have a team that can win the Super Bowl. So it's good that they've been pouring resources into the offensive line.
The Packers took your advice to heart. Would they take like 10 offensive linemen in this draft and no wide receivers? I'm exaggerating with the 10 offensive linemen. Oh my God.
It is so hilarious to watch the Packers melt down draft after draft after draft.
I don't know how this is going to work out. Somebody could very well take this tape and freezing cold takes me at my old station down at the Fan within a year or two from now. But I've taken so much joy, mostly talking to my girlfriend, who's a diehard Packers fan, and just laughing and laughing.
Is she trying to justify it?
Like, no, she's irate, like most Packers fans. She's irate by what's going on here, and she said she was complaining that they took another guard late in the draft, and I said, well, you got to get somebody to protect Jordan Love, don't you?
That GPA that Thor Nystrom made, which had the Vikings as the number 1 with a 3.9. The Packers were dead last with a 1.3, and the second worst team was Houston at 2.07. So almost
That's Bill O'Brien.
A full letter grade worse than a Bill O'Brien
That's
ran
Bill
franchise.
O'Brien. If you believe draft graders, the Packers could have cheated off Bill O'Brien's sheet and had a better draft than what they had in 2020. I'm telling you, half my conversations with my girlfriend over the course of the weekend were just evil laughter from me. Like what you just heard from me, that's been half our conversation.
Dude, can you imagine being Aaron Rodgers? Like if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're watching the first round, it's a Zoom draft, and there's my general manager, there's Goody. All right, gonna get me a wideout. Oh yeah, there's LaFleur, there's my guy right there. All right, which wide receiver is it going to be? And then they trade up to draft a guy that wasn't a first-round great quarterback, and they are basically virtually high-fiving and spitting in your face. Like, get his ass to the Vikings in 2021. Make it happen.
I got a lot of Wisconsin folks on my timeline from my time in Milwaukee, both in the media and just fans and former listeners of mine from the Fan in Milwaukee. Watching the progression of what you just laid out, like, oh my God, here we go. They just traded up. Here we go. What are they going to get? A-Rod. and then Jordan Love, and just watching all the air come out of that balloon and slowly further come out of that balloon till it was just totally empty, and you passed up on 36 wide receivers over the course of
And
7 rounds of draft.
Here's the other hilarious justification that Packer fans, because there's a lot of Packer fans that are like, well, I mean, it's this, when the last time they did this, they replaced one Hall of Fame quarterback with another. All right. Key distinction from 15 years ago. Aaron Rodgers was widely regarded as possibly the number 1 overall pick in that draft. You guys remember? It was either Alex Smith or Aaron Rodgers going number 1 overall. And then there was some worry that, wow, whichever one doesn't go number 1 could be in for a little bit of a tumble. And so, like, the Packers are sitting there in the 20s in 2005, and they're like, well, I mean, we can't let this guy was going to be the number 1 overall pick. We can't let him continue to tumble. It would have been like if Tua fell to the mid-20s. Like, well, geez, I guess we got to take him.
I don't even
Jordan Love is not even
You know what, Maggie? I'm going to slightly disagree with you there. I don't think it's that crazy to go and get Jordan Love where they got him. When you look at Jordan Love and you look at the project that he is, I think that's a perfect place for him. I believe Matt LaFleur is one of the brighter young offensive minds in this league. He gets a quarterback to mold and coach up in his image and what he wants from a quarterback in his system. And you don't need Jordan Love to step on the field and be a Hall of Famer from day one. Aaron Nagler from Cheesehead TV, I know you follow him on Twitter, Mackie. He put out, and I've heard this expression before, he said the worst time to look for a quarterback is when you need one. And that is a very true statement in the NFL. The worst time. So
or when you went 13, what was their record? 13-3.
They went
like,
to the NFC
one of the greatest
Championship.
quarterbacks of all time.
I get getting Aaron Rodgers' successor. I do. As little sense as it makes to a lot of people, and as much as that might piss off Aaron Rodgers, I get it. And look, if Aaron Rodgers is still playing in 3 or 4 years and Jordan Love is molded into something, you have a very good trade chip with one of those 2 guys to improve your football team at that point. But to go the entire draft and not get him any weapons, not get him a big target at tight end, not go and get him one of the 36 wide receivers in a historically deep wide receiver draft, that's a fail. You drafted a fullback? You drafted a fullback in what was that, the 3rd round? Hilarious. Thank you. I appreciate it, Brian Kuhn.
And honestly, like, if you're a Vikings fan, think about if the Packers had said, all right, we're going to go forget about the future. We're going to get that 2nd Super Bowl championship with Aaron Rodgers, and we're going to do everything we can to just go all in for 2020 and 21. And just 1st round pick, we're going to trade up for the best wide receiver, 2nd round, like whatever that looks like. You would be sitting here as a Vikings fan thinking, man, this is the first time in 15 years that they've done what they probably should, which is just go all in offensively with one of the great quarterbacks of all time. And instead, you come out of this, and I think a miracle would have to happen, like injuries. Well, let's assume the season's played, which might be miracle number 1. Let's have our fingers crossed. The Vikings on paper right now, because of what happened this weekend, are better than the Packers. Like, the Vikings, to me, just moved up to the top of that division.
I don't know if I can go that far because of what I was talking about leading up to the draft, and I'm not going to change my stance now. Expecting dramatic impact from rookies, even very good rookies, is often a fool's errand. It almost never happens, man. That's why the Trent Williams trade would have made a lot of sense to me. I was saying that the whole time going into this draft. You never don't want to look to the future. The draft is always all about the future. But when you have as many draft assets as they had, and you could flip a few of those and turn them into a bona fide, proven NFL left tackle who's made it to 7 Pro Bowls. I don't know if he's still a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro, but the dude has proven that he can perform at some level at this stage of the game. That would have made sense to me. I'm not going to look at what the Vikings and the Packers did on paper in a draft and say that if the Vikings had added some free agents, if the Vikings had made a trade of established NFL players and made them better the day they walk into the building, okay. But even as good as Justin Jefferson, Gladney, and Cleveland and the rest of them are, and all 3 of those guys who I just listed off, they come with that label of NFL ready. But even the most NFL ready players, especially at those 3 positions, tend not to have huge impact in year 1. Year 2, year 3, they might be very helpful to Kirk Cousins, whoever is the quarterback, and Mike Zimmer, whoever is the head coach. But I'm not going to say that they leapfrog the Packers in the division because they had a better draft. That's hard for me to say.
But here's another factor that has to be considered. Okay, we've seen what happens when Aaron Rodgers, when him and Mike McCarthy at the end of that relationship, there was very little trust. Aaron Rodgers was mostly just on an island, rolling his eyes at every single thing that Mike McCarthy did.
Or just
And-
cursing at the stupid bleeping calls that he'd make from the sidelines.
But
That's
I think
a quote.
whatever goodwill was sitting there between front office and Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, I think that cup is a lot emptier today than it would have been 72 hours ago.
And
There's no way
and I'm
this
telling
sits well
you-
with Aaron Rodgers.
I'm telling you, that could be a dangerous thing for the Vikings because Aaron Rodgers is a guy who is fueled by people doubting him. Aaron Rodgers goes out every Sunday that he goes against one of the 22 teams that passed up on him in the NFL draft and says, I'm going to show you why you shouldn't have passed up on me. Aaron Rodgers loves to be doubted, and I'm actually a little bit scared by him being doubted by his very own franchise, the team that drafted him and that he's given so much to over the course of his career, that they're doubting him. This very well could have lighted a fire under Aaron Rodgers. Not good for the Packers long term when he eventually says, you know what, I don't think I'm appreciated anymore here and I want to go play somewhere else. That's when this will screw him. But in 2020, a pissed off Aaron Rodgers with something to prove to his own team could be a very dangerous thing for the Vikings and the rest of the NFC.